life of innocent people through gun violence is not something we can abide with. That coming here week after week after every killing, every mass killing, to have a moment of silence, if we were absolutely honest and took a moment of silence for every moment that someone is gunned down in America, we'd never have an opportunity to speak with one another. We know that today is a defining moment for this Congress. There are those who would come to this floor and mock what we're doing today. Well, they'll have to answer to their own makers for that. But I want to share with you an incident that took place in my lifetime. There was a wonderful man in the borough of Brooklyn, and he was a police officer, he was a corrections officer, but most of all, he was a community activist that loved his community. He began to see an uptick in violence in our community. And so what he did on his own was he began to mobilize. He started parades in the community. And the parade was called Love Yourself, Stop the Violence. Love yourself, stop the violence. Well, this man became very popular in Brooklyn, New York, and ultimately got elected to the New York City Council. I had an opportunity to serve with Councilman James E. Davis, and before all of his colleagues, before the Speaker of the City Council, before Mayor Michael Bloomberg, James E. Davis was gunned down. Gunned down in the chambers of the New York City Council. And from that day forward, the chemistry of the body, the chemistry in our town has never quite been recalibrated. So when we come to the floor, we have all raised our hands today to say that we have been impacted, that we have in some form or fashion been traumatized by what we have allowed ourselves to become, which is callous about human life, and that we have become senseless in terms of our ability to make a difference. I don't believe that that's the case. I know that we can make a difference. I know that with expanded background checks, that we can make a difference. I know by putting terrorists on a no-fly list and making sure that they don't have access to the purchase of guns, we are making a difference. And for those who would make excuses in this day and age for why we cannot act, for why we will not vote, all I can say is that you'll have to answer to that with your maker. We will continue. We, people of goodwill, will continue to fight this fight until the day that legislation is passed here in the House of Representatives, until the day that assault weapons are banned once again in the United States of America. I want to yield at this moment to my colleague, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries.
I want to thank my distinguished colleague from New York, Yvette Clarke, for eloquent words and for standing here on the floor of the House of Representatives with all of our colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus who are here to give voice to the feeling that so many people all across America have had, which is enough is enough. And it's time for this Congress to get off of your hands and do something about the gun violence epidemic that exists in this country. More than 30,000 lives each and every year as a result of gun violence. I'm proud to be here with John Lewis. When I first came to the House of Representatives in January of 2013, just to be able to serve with a legendary American hero like John Lewis was such an honor. And he said to me on the House floor, he said, "Young man, are you the new guy?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Are you from Brooklyn?" I was tempted to say Brooklyn is always in the house. But I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I've heard some good things about you, but let me just say this can be a tough town, and so I don't want you to get into any trouble unless it's good trouble." And I'm here today to say, John Lewis, we join you in getting into good trouble on behalf of the American people. Because it's unacceptable to have a situation where we've got 5% of the world's population, but 50% of the world's guns. And we can't even, in the aftermath of the carnage down in Orlando, take a vote on behalf of the American people to prevent suspected terrorists from being able to purchase guns that are not used to hunt, deer, but are used to hunt human beings. Because people on the other side of the aisle would rather function like wholly owned subsidiaries of the NRA, as opposed to functioning on behalf of the American people. And you know, Dr. King once said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And I think what Dr. King was saying is that in this world you've got some good folks, and then you've got some difficult folks. But all you need for righteousness to prevail is for a few good folks to stand up and push for justice. And we know the history of the civil rights movement taught us that in the face of trying to make change, there were people who stood in the way. George Wallace stood in the way. Jim Clark stood in the way. Bull Connor stood in the way. But guess what? The good people prevailed. And so even if the House Republicans want to stand in the way, good will always prevail. So the question is, why are we engaging in a sit-down? We're sitting down so that democracy can stand up. We're sitting down so that righteousness can stand up. We're sitting down so that truth can stand up. We're sitting down so that victory can stand up. And we're not going to leave this House floor to the American people get the vote that they deserve. God bless America.
That sounds like a student of John Lewis's. Members of the House, the Dean of the House of Representatives, the gentleman from Michigan, the original founder of the Congressional Black Caucus, former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, currently ranking member, John Conyers. Thank you, my brothers and sisters. In 1968, the greatest man I ever knew was killed by a senseless act of gun violence. Dr. Martin Luther King. And I fought for 15 years to honor his sacrifice and introduced the first bill to make his birthday a holiday. I fought alongside over these 5 decades with the likes of Shirley Chisholm, Julian Bond, Jesse Jackson Jr., and John Lewis. Knew him before he came to Congress. Today, this has been the most unusual moment in my decades in the House of Representatives. Our brothers and sisters are being mowed down by guns. Thousands of people in our country every year die unnecessarily. We will fight as long as it takes to honor their lives and protect every American. And we'll fight together with people like Louis. But all of you are the heroes and sheroes of what we can do and will do from this moment on. In all my 50 years or more, I've never seen us come together like this in the House of Representatives. Because all the Republicans have offered these victims are moments of silence. And we will not be silent anymore. No bill, no bill.
To our former chairman of the Democratic Caucus, who has conducted this the way any chairman should do it, John Larson, thank you for bringing us together. So, I've heard it said so eloquently by so many of the champions of this country, so let me say something that I think is important for America to hear, because this doesn't happen very often. And I see so many people here so late at